If you're listening on podcast, be sure to tune in to our YouTube channel on YouTube at Wild and Weird WV.
Welcome to Wild and Weird Radio, a Wild and Weird West Virginia podcast. Welcome back to Wild and Weird Radio, everybody. This is your actual regularly scheduled show. Thank you for joining us once again, everybody who's listening to us out there in Radio Land, at work, in your cubicles, driving down the road in your car, or tuning in over on YouTube. We appreciate each and every one of you guys. You are all amazing, and without all of you guys, we wouldn't be able to do what we do.
Truth.
We finally got some time here to actually get in the studio to do a full production show. And it feels like forever since we've been able to pull that off. And it is a topic that you guys have been asking for.
Well, we still can't, I can't say that it's easy to pull it off at this point. There's a lot going on.
There is a whole lot going on, but we'll get into that
and all
here,
that fun
here in
stuff.
a bit.
But yeah,
what do we got in the news?
Well, first of all, the show is brought to you by, let's not forget, our incredible people out there. Adam Good, Theresa's Haunted Histories, the Tri-State, Dewey Edwards, James Boggs, Spooky Appalachia, Larry Hose, Guitars and Chains Craig, Travis Aurednik, Geoffery Steele, Russ Bailey, Chris Coots, Ada Cox, Nancy White. Thank you for your incredible, generous donations to keep this show, as Joe likes to say, free for all eternity.
Yep, and the list grows every week.
The list does grow every week. So every
Thursday,
every
the community
Thursday
surrounding the show is amazing.
It absolutely is. So let's head over to the news desk, just like we used to do in the old days. It seems like it's been a while.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And let's see what we got going on. Okay. So busy news week, not busy news week. What do you, I mean, I don't know, because I just came home from vacation, and I ignored everything, to be honest with you, while I was on vacation. So there's that.
It's been a so-so week.
Okay.
You guys were talking about Avi coming out with something earlier today. I haven't seen that yet. So what was that?
Yeah,
about?
that literally just came out.
Just like hours ago.
Oh wow,
morning.
really?
Yeah, that was out this morning, I believe. Yeah, apparently Avi has come forward with his, his findings, which he actually talked about these at the MUFON meeting, I guess, the big symposium they had there over the weekend. So he revealed it to them first, but now it's official. It was on USA Today. It looks like basically it is a historic discovery. It represents the first time that humans put their hands on material from a large object that arrived to Earth from outside the solar system. That's what he wrote. He goes on to say some rather incredible things about it, however, and the analysis are still forthcoming. So I want to put that out there.
Yeah.
This doesn't mean it's aliens, but what it isn't, researchers on the team say the composition is of beryllium, lanthanum, uranium, labeled as BeLaU. It's a composition. It does not match terrestrial alloys natural on Earth, or fallout from any nuclear explosions, because tests out in the ocean.
Yeah.
Additionally, composition is not found in magma oceans of Earth, nor on the Moon, Mars, or natural meteorites in the solar system.
The beryllium is one of those that's super rare, isn't it?
You got me. I mean, this stuff, apparently in the concentrations that he's talking about, it's not only is it super rare, it just don't happen. So this thing didn't come from our neck of the woods. It's 100% what we call beyond extraterrestrial. It's extra.
Oh, here's something interesting about
solar.
beryllium I just looked up. It says it is a product of the spallation of larger atomic nuclei that have collided with cosmic rays.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not from our neck of the woods. So, yeah, pretty exciting. I thought that was exciting anyway. I know that there was another news story relating to, UFOs and whatnot. It was the Japanese astronomer story. You saw that, right? From Newsweek.
I don't think I did.
Oh yeah, they were anticipating signals from from aliens, from extraterrestrials.
Yeah.
In the next 40 years?
No. They were right now, because they sent the signal. Yeah. They sent the signal 40 years ago.
That's what it was. Yes.
Oh.
I read this article a few days ago, and so I knew the 40 years was somewhere there.
That's right. These Japanese astronomers sent out a signal 40 some years ago, and targeted. I forget exactly where they targeted, which star system it was, but it would take 40. It would the solar system was 16.7 light years away from Earth. That's what it was, and it was is in the Aquila constellation. That's where it was at. So Altair. It's the 12th brightest star in the sky, and of course we've not detected any planets in orbit. So why did they choose this section of sky? They don't say that. I'd like to know that. I'd like to really understand why you would choose that and then expect a reply in an X amount of years. That's kind of interesting, don't you think?
They set an expectation for some reason.
Well, the expected date for the proposed possible future response was August 22nd this year. So last week, basically. Very interesting because, to my knowledge, I don't know that there has been any indication that anything in that constellation has ever, shown any interest whatsoever. This isn't like, we have FRBs coming from there, right? I mean, this is, it's just weird. But my thing is why they would think that an intelligent alien civilization capable of receiving our transmission would A, even answer it, B, answer it immediately.
Or understand it.
Yeah. It's like, this is the arrogance and stupidity of humans right here. We just think that, well, we figured it out, so you should be able to figure it out. Well, it's not necessarily that they can't figure it out. It might be that, why would they? Again,
do you know how they sent the message? Like, was it in a language or was it in binary?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure how this one went. This was
binary.
Japanese.
I could understand that.
I mean, this was Japanese, so, could be symbols for all I know. But I just thought it was interesting that, people actually waited for a response for 40 years. I mean, I don't know. That's weird to me.
So anything else on the news desk this week, or has it just been, or is that really about the only cases we got?
Nah, that's about it.
Well, I published an article for Paranormality magazine last night about 2 huge disc-like objects found on the ocean floor.
Were those the ones that were found using Google Map?
Yeah. You can actually look up the coordinates and see them from satellite. They're pretty big. One of them is estimated to be 6.4 kilometers in diameter, and the other one is about 4 kilometers in diameter. I put the coordinates up in that article too if you want to look it up. They're pretty big.
So what does science say about these? Anything? Or
nothing that I know of yet.
Nothing?
They're probably going to dismiss it and say it's like erosion or something.
Are they in the same scale as that building in South Korea?
That's a good question, because that's what I thought about when I saw that.
That's something that somebody needs to look at.
Yep.
Well, something interesting about that is right in that area there was a UFO flap. I think it was back in the 2000s off Lima, Peru.
There was
a lot of USO activity back then.
Yeah. Well, it's also Peru, so
Right. Peru's been a hot spot for as long as Appalachia's been a hot spot.
Thousands and thousands of years. Yeah, I mean, this is true. I mean, there's a lot of legends relating to Peru and the ancients, so to speak. So, but yeah, I don't really have anything else in the news. Other than we're just sitting here waiting to see what happens with with the whole UAP situation at this point.
Yeah, because there's been some interesting talk coming from that, hasn't there?
Been some scuttle.
Yeah,
I was gonna say
there are
there's
people who are not happy.
Yeah, there's a little bit of talk going on, but you're not hearing a whole lot right now. We've got a lot of people who are, I think, very frantic at this point, trying to figure out what their next play is going to be.
Yeah.
I believe that we're going to hear a little bit more about this here within the next, I say, a couple of weeks. We'll get a little bit of there's going to be something else comes out of this because it's been too quiet. Anytime we have quiet like this, we know it's always followed by something. Someone releases they release something, don't they? I mean, that's how this has been going. If you watched it from day one, you know that that's how it worked. The pattern is the same. It has not changed. Mm-hmm. Every time there's a revelation, and then there's debunking, and then there's silence because they can't debunk it anymore. And then there's another little piece of evidence that comes out, and then a little bit of debunking, and then silence. And we're right here in the silence part. This is the calm before, so to speak.
I'm curious as to how disruptive this next storm will be. We know how disruptive David Grush and how he came forward and what happened there.
Mm-hmm.
The next disruption should be pretty interesting.
Yes, I think so too. I think that the next disruption, because they built, right? They built every single time. They build upon each other. It's like, first we had, the UFOs are real. So there's strange lights. Okay, that's cool. And then you had the possibility that they were intelligently controlled or something, right? And then you had non-human intelligences.
Yep.
So what's coming next? You know what I think it is. But we're going to wait and see. And we're going to see how close we got on this one. Anybody's got their, got their cards in for, the alien contact official within the next, I'd say, 6 to 8 months. You wouldn't be far off, I don't think. It's going to be one form. I think there's going to be something happening, either physical or non-physical. There's going to be something like a signal, like I've said before. I think a signal is probably the safest bet. We'll see, though.
All right. Well, I believe that wraps us up on the news desk for this week's installment.
I think so. Let's go ahead and close it out. Well,
all right, folks. So this is a show that you have been calling for. You have been
actually
wanting.
Yeah, you've actually conned us into doing this.
Ron has ran from this show.
Yep. Physically ran from it. And then had to actually write the guidelines for it. So, there won't be certain words spoken. Let's just say that.
From him.
Not from me. Probably not from Joe.
Me, on the other hand, we are going to be tackling the case for Dogman tonight, everybody. So brace yourselves, because this one takes us down some weird roads.
It really does. It's an interesting phenomenon, don't you think?
Oh yeah, it really is. And the most interesting part about it to me is that the theories and I guess you would say the stories about these dogmen or dog people have existed as long as we have domesticated dogs. Mm-hmm. It's been around for ages. However, you're not going to find any cave art. The closest, you're not going to find pictographs. You're not going to find anything like that. What the closest thing you're going to find is in the Egyptian lore is you're going to find the. You know what? I'm going to stop you.
I'm going to stop you just for a second, because I begrudgingly remember this because I didn't want to believe it. Last year, when they found there was a cave. I don't remember where it was at, but it was the one where they said that they had drawn all these visions. Remember that? Because there was like these creatures with wings. There was the first anthropomorphic figures. That was a big deal. It was a very big deal. One of those figures loosely resembles some form of not quite a human head on the body. I don't know if I would call it a, puppy dude, but I would say that there could possibly be some very early accounts of these. Is what I'm trying to get at.
Well, there were early accounts, but like from my research side, like I don't recall seeing any, and I've dug for years, and I don't remember that article. I remember vaguely remember it, but again, it was last year.
It was last year, yeah.
But barring that possibility that one was a anthropomorphic dogman creature, you're not going to find much until you enter into Egypt.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
and then you start seeing, the Anubis creature. But where did this all start coming in? Where did the idea become, I guess, cultural reality?
Yeah, because like you said, there's the past stories, right? I mean,
right?
We had werewolves.
We did, yeah.
I mean, and that was a big lure. Let's be real. I mean, that's and it was pretty well almost a fact of the day. For a while there, like these things were real. They could
certain parts of the U.S. they still believe that. Like Louisiana still has the Rougarou. Like you still hear stories of the Rougarou down there.
Yeah, exactly. Right. But that's the whole point. Like these things had a origin. Yeah. All these stories had an origin, and what was the one thing? The cynocephaly.
Cynocephaly, which is basically the dog-headedness.
Dog-headedness. Yes.
And the French were the ones that had rumors of these people.
Yeah, I mean they're all around. In the research that I had looked at, there was the whole talk about. I think even Dave had brought this up in his book, Saint Christopher, that he had the head of a dog.
Yeah,
and that he, I guess he basically was cured somehow. He did some good deeds, and Jesus gave him back a human form. But according to those stories, he wasn't the only one, though. There was actually a whole group of these people.
Right.
And one of the weirdest things I found, and you might be able to speak to this because I didn't do any more research on it. I was busy doing other things, but I did come across a reference that stated that even the people of, Canaan, they thought that some of the people, the Canaanites, they thought that some of the Canaanites, it literally translated to Canaan. Mm-hmm. I mean, is there something to that, or is that just some,
It's more conjecture.
Yeah, right.
Really, like, because you don't see that kind of connection until modern day.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know.
The Canaanites were just that they were people.
Right, that's like, what I always heard.
From a historical biblical standpoint, like or a biblical historical standpoint, they were just people.
Right.
They were, but yeah, like, that's more. People have looked at things and tried to dissect and do some wordplay and.
Well, we do know that words have meanings, and they are translated over, from even the word werewolf, for example.
The Nephilim people try to connect the Canaanites to the Nephilim too.
They do.
Well, okay then. I guess I can see where that comes down, because that would go into the whole, the true. I would say that there's more possibilities of a true form of a Nephilism there than it would be with anything else.
Yeah, you're right.
Because it would be this is a half human, half creature of some sort, right? And the legend is that whatever these things were, they were dog-like creatures. Like they were wolf-like. They didn't say dog. They were wolf-like creatures, wolf-like people. And the thing is, though, They actually wore clothes. It was like, this is normal for
Right.
us. We're
Well,
just
and
dog,
you know,
we're
Marco
dog
Polo
people.
was the one that was talking about those that wore the
Um,
clothes, and they were said to be on
Christopher
islands
Columbus.
in
Christopher Columbus even was talking
and
about
Cortez,
this.
but those were in the Americas, and
Right.
they were rumored to be more aggressive and more animal like, less civilized than the ones in South Asia.
So, do we
Marco
have a
Polo, the ones he
basis?
encountered or claimed to encounter, were in South Asia and islands area,
Okay.
and they wore clothes. They were living on the islands, and he described them as having a mastiff like face. So you're
Mhm.
talking like the big floppy jowls. You just want to walk up to them and like, you know. But the ones that Cortez and Columbus
It's probably very
mentioned happening in
disrespectful
the
to do that,
Americas,
Joe.
not so nice. They were
Yeah.
more dog-headed, like when they think of like a German Shepherd dog head.
Well, this is the basic shape of things to come, because when the theory, not really theory, but when the phenomena gets its pop cultural definition, that is the image that gets played out. The more that
Oh
Anubis,
yeah.
Yep.
German Shepherdy kind of pointed nose, pointy ears,
The jackal.
the jackal. Which I think is interesting because Egypt wise, that's an underworld being, so that's kind of interesting if you ask me. The mythology behind it. So, where did the modern concept
Well, the
actually come
modern
from?
concept, interestingly enough, the oldest modern concept, and this is thanks to Anita Allen, that I was able to actually scrounge up, was actually a story in Japanese legend, and it was its name was the Satori,
Mm.
and she found the dates more or less, and that was the oldest dated ones that I could find. And they go back into like roughly around 3.5-4,000 years ago,
Okay.
and it talks about these they could speak like human language, and they could also read people's minds, and but it takes care to not harm people. And then on the other hand, if a human did attempt to harm it, it would flip the coin and Dogman them to death. But
Mm-hmm,
um,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
the Satori is one of the oldest ones in that lore that actually kind of, it wasn't civilized. It was not wearing clothes. They could communicate telepathically. They wouldn't hurt you. However, if you tried to hurt them, they're going to ruin your weekend. But you've got more modern. You start coming into the actual werewolf, the French tellings of the werewolf story.
Yeah.
Which was direct is the loup garou, which is where the nickname, the Americanized name, or Cajun, more Cajun name,
Mm-hmm.
which is the rougarou.
Mm-hmm.
There's some pretty weird ones in this book that Linda Goffrey wrote.
Oh, which one? Monsters Among Us. Yeah, that's a
Monsters
great book.
Among Us.
She actually talked to a lady who used to be married. I think it was Roman Polanski she was married to. And she said when she was in downtown LA one day, she stopped at a stoplight and she looked over and there was a limousine next to her, and the limousine's back window rolled down and there was a man with a German Shepherd's head in the limousine. And he turned around and spoke to her in English. And then the window rolled up and they just went through the light. And she said it was the strangest thing. And she had like panic attacks about it for like days afterwards. She couldn't sleep. That was all she could think about. There's all kinds of weird. There's a bunch of them in that book of people who lived in like pretty major cities encountering these things, but they didn't seem like they didn't seem as vicious as the ones out in the woods. They mostly just seemed interested in the people.
Ones that happen out in the woods. If you look back into pre-1980s,
Mm-hmm.
you're not going to hear anything about the ones in the woods. These are all of the stories you hear about of these dog-headed people
Yeah.
are more like the more recent stuff that came from Skinwalker Ranch back when Bigelow was running the show.
Right.
Was these dog-headed people would show up in your house smoking a cigar.
Yeah, exactly. Or large dog-like creatures.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
You weren't going to find anything in these old cryptozoology books. You weren't going to find anything, especially like from the the fathers of cryptozoology. You weren't going to find anything because a lot of these translated more into the supernatural stuff.
mm-hmm.
And that was not like cryptozoology is not an arcane zoology.
No.
Right. It's
You
not.
know what I mean? So like
But
they
people
left
think
this
it
stuff
is.
aside.
But that's the problem. People think that it is, though. That's
Another
Exactly.
really
that's
good
an
one.
issue.
In this book, there was actually an entire church who witnessed a Dogman. There was a lady who was acting really weird. Nobody had seen her before, and she came to the church, and she was acting fidgety and stuff. And right in the middle of the preaching, she stands up and just all of a sudden like snaps and turns into a Dogman. And
But
some of the
wait,
guys from the
she
church like rushed
snapped
this lady.
and she turned into that's a werewolf.
Yeah,
Right.
like
Yeah,
in
that's
an
a werewolf.
instant, she was a wolf.
That's a werewolf. See, here's our difference in terminologies, and that I wanted to really address that in this show because there is a difference because there's a definition given to the Dogman phenomena, and one of the definitions is that it is what it is. It doesn't change. It doesn't morph. It doesn't have the ability to, to become a human, so to speak. It just is half man and half dog or half canine. But the actual terminology, the Dogman thing, the whole, I think one of the weirdest parts of it that I had found was that it could have originally came from a song. Did
Back
you
in
see
'87.
that? Yes, written by
that
Steve
DJ from
Cook.
Wisconsin.
Yeah, Steve Cook wrote the song called, what's the name of it? The Legend. It is for April Fool's Day spot that they were doing at the radio
Strange April
station.
Fool's joke.
Mm-hmm. And he wrote this song about basically the Dogman. And he, which is crazy. I mean, it was in, I think it was WTCM FM, Traverse City, Michigan, in 1987. So what else happened in Michigan, guys?
Well, not to be, in another year, of course, in 1887,
Yeah,
you had the Michigan Dogman,
right.
and that was 100 years prior.
But was it called the Dogman?
No, it wasn't. This creature
Bingo.
wasn't called the Dogman.
That's what I'm getting at. So I think that is what happened. When he wrote this song, it kind of seems like that was where the terminology, they were there before. I know people were saying like, there wasn't Dogman before. Yeah, there was. They were just called something completely different.
They had their
That's
own
like
name.
Dogman. Mothman was coined by a newspaper too.
Right,
so,
it's the same
I mean,
thing. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. But they've been there before, right? I mean, that's what
Yep.
we're talking about. Because I had seen one thing on Reddit where someone was arguing about what you just said, Brandon. They said, well, show me, ancient cave art of Bigfoot and of Mothman. They don't exist. And I'm thinking, I don't have time for this because I could literally
Sure
show
they do.
you.
You just don't. You're not looking.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have time to show you all that is there.
One of the most famous pictographs in existence is of a Bigfoot.
Yeah. I mean, the hairy man.
I mean, what about the
petroglyph
Garuda?
of the crying man.
Yeah, and the Garuda.
The Garuda. Yeah. The Garuda. And there's several others that are absolute. I mean, they're just like Mothman.
Yeah.
Birdman.
So, yeah, Birdman cults. I mean, there's so many.
So let's just
So
play some
dogs.
devil's advocate here.
Yeah. Go.
Okay.
I wanted to show you guys this. This is drawn by that witness of the church wolf.
Yeah, it looks like a
Notice-
werewolf.
It's a
Yeah,
werewolf.
but look at the feet. It's got hooves.
Oh,
He
and that's
swore
just
it had
devil.
cloven hooves.
Oh, that's the devil right there. We know
It's
how.
within a church.
Okay, so this is a good point, though.
It's
But
half
you-
devil, half wolf.
But you just brought up a good point. you brought up a good point. We can see that belief systems have contaminated in a witness account, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
That's what we saw right there. That's belief systems.
I find it hard to believe that this person, an 8-foot tall wolf, just showed up in the middle of your church and you're staring at its feet.
Right.
Like, that's just hard to believe for me.
Yeah, and we're gonna address all this stuff, I guess, in the Nephilim stuff too. But one of the things to bring up here is that cloven-hooved devils didn't exist until like artists started.
Santa Claus.
Yeah.
It's like Santa Claus didn't exist until Coca-Cola really made Santa Claus Santa Claus.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the legend was there.
The legend was there.
The legend was there. But what we know today as Santa Claus, literally,
Yeah.
it
The
exists,
fat man in the red suit with the white beard.
drinking Coca-Cola, obviously, because that's who created him, was an artist who was trying to make something for that. But what you said, it's the same thing. And some of the devil mythology, it's really so anti-Semitic, it's not even funny if you really want to get into it. And I don't, because it's really disturbing.
In the Nephilim thing, it's part of it, man.
Oh, well, it's the same thing with a certain beam that everybody's talking about. We've talked about that before, too. You want to talk about that stuff and you want to believe in that stuff, you're really following some dark people.
You really are.
You think that, these dark people are in control of the world. You're kind of following that when you go into that stuff. It's really scary.
Yeah. So
yeah, anyway, we're not going to go there right now.
The devil's advocate, the devil with unclothed.
The devil. Yeah.
So we all here, most of us know what a tulpa is. Everybody who's listening, because we've covered tulpas in the past.
Mm-hmm.
There was an instance in 1887 witnessed of this dog-like canid, human-like canid, rather, not dog-like canid, because that's just redundant. But this
isn't it?
This bipedal dog that howled and kind of had like a weird human scream. 100 years later, a man uses this as kind of an inspiration for an April Fool's Day song. Sings the song, creates the tulpa, because all of these people are now thinking of this Dogman entity, and the psychic energy is so strong that it actually manifests this being into existence.
Well, that would be almost like an egregore at that point, because
it's like an egregore at that point. You're right.
Yeah, you got so many people who are actually, and I can
goes
see
beyond
this.
tulpa. It's now an egregore. You're right.
Yeah, and I can see this. I mean, I really can. I know that sounds to some people like, you're going into the hoodoo, voodoo, weird stuff.
You're right.
Well,
that's
so what?
Devil advocate time.
Yeah, but it's also basic. It could be. I say this lightly, but it could be psychological as well. Just because you put it into their heads, now they have something to think about. Now they have something to compare it to. It's almost like that not deer thing, right?
Yep.
Because how many people, after they heard about
phenomena,
right? Because people heard about, I was out in the woods and that deer stood up on his hind legs. I bet that wasn't deer. Newsflash, they do that.
Yeah,
they do that. But how many people know that? Some people didn't know that. Right. Is what I'm getting at. It wasn't like you had a report where, the not deer invited you over to have tea. I would question that. I would think, well, that's certainly not a deer if it invited you over to have tea. But it didn't do that. So
right.
My whole thing is, what if they saw something?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What if this entity was brought into existence because of thought?
Mm-hmm.
That would explain a lot of the supernatural attributes, which we're going to dive more into later.
Mm-hmm.
Just think about that, guys.
Yeah.
Think about that while you're listening, because when we start talking about the possibilities of what this thing could be, we're going to circle back.
Yeah. So I like what you just went with it anyway, because you set up a psychological aspect to this. Now you set up that, well, we have a definition, we have something to call this now. And then all of a sudden, this guy gets these phone calls, which is exactly what happened. He got these phone calls. The station gets inundated. They actually wanted to play the song over and over again, by the way. And you can go listen to the song on YouTube. I'll put the link up in here. But they get reports that people, oh, yeah, we've seen that, or we've heard that, or, did they? Or did they just say, this reminds me sort of what we encountered, or maybe we encountered that. I don't know. You think that's what it was? Oh yeah, it kind of fits that.
Well, whether it was inspired by a song or not, since we brought up Linda Godfrey a moment ago, we've got to address the Bray Road Beast.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And it was named, this is a quote from her book, named from the rural farm road in which it was first purportedly sighted. Reports of this creature from the 1980s and then into the 90s prompted a local newspaper, the Walworth County Week, to assign reporter Linda Godfrey to cover the story. Godfrey was initially skeptical, but later became convinced of the sincerity of many of the witnesses. Her series of articles later became a book titled The Beast of Bray Road, Tailing Wisconsin's Werewolf. And even she was addressing it as werewolf. Because some of these sightings involved transformation. Some of them were just, they saw the Dogman creature.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
But the stuff with Linda's book, like you can go and, Linda's, unfortunately, she passed, I think a year and a half ago, roughly. And but you can still find her books on Amazon. She's got a couple great books out there. And you can also go over and you can watch Small Town Monsters, Beast of Bray Road. Mm-hmm. Fantastic production. Mm-hmm. Is one of the first kind of movie-esque ones that he produced, and had some really killer props in it too.
Oh yeah.
I've actually got to see some.
So
props.
what do you guys make of the Bray Road Beast?
There was something there.
Yeah,
clearly there was something there. The stories weren't just made up. And correct me if I'm wrong, but was Linda she was one of the first people who actually started to put this together, right?
Yes.
That we were talking about some kind of a new, not really cryptid, but a new definition of something.
Oh yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
She didn't mean to though.
Because she was a journalist.
Right. What you said, what you just said there, Brandon.
Yeah, she didn't mean to. It just fell in her lap. Like,
right.
She did one story on this, and then all of a sudden, people started just mailing her and calling her, and actually going up to knock on her door and everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I mean, this has happened though with other reporters.
That's right.
Who have covered the UFO phenomena, who have covered Bigfoot.
Whitley Strieber, the exact same thing. I mean, he literally got inundated with mounds of letters. When he first wrote the book.
Whitley, before that, he was just a horror writer. He just read horror books. He wasn't an actual journalist or anything. He had no intentions of getting into the UFO community.
That's how this works.
The skeptics out there, they use his history as a horror writer against him.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Against his credibility and against the encounter that he had, saying that he was just writing a good story and he decided to say it was true.
Yeah, I don't think
he was actually pretty well
like
established by then. He didn't need to make up anything.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't think that that's going to be a whole subject for another show, because we're gonna do a deep dive into Wit soon. But it's a good point that Brandon brought up, because it does seem like a lot of times that these legends, these massive legends, just fall into people's laps. And then all of a sudden they're born, and you have these people who are just writing account after account of, yeah, I saw that, or I experienced that, or I heard that, and but did they? That's my question. Did they, or are they superimposing now what they know now onto what it may have been? Like you've even said it yourself, memory's subjective. It
sort of happened like that with Gray Barker too, except Gray. He had an entirely different approach to that.
Yeah, entirely different.
He was not like Linda Goffrey. I'll just put it that way.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. But I think that that's one of the weirdest things about the Bray Road thing. I remember watching. I think it was, which one was it that Josh Gates did? I don't know if it was Unknown, Expedition Unknown. I don't.
Oh, it's Expedition Unknown.
X.
It may be X. It was one of his last ones he did. I think it was X actually.
X was the one where he had other people going.
That's it. That's it.
Okay.
And they were actually out in Bray Road area. They were investigating out there, following up on the legend, and they started seeing some weird footprints. They documented the whole thing. They had LiDAR scans of the footprints, all that. But one of the craziest things was something started tailing them.
Yeah.
And they caught it on camera, and you can see these huge, literally glowing red eyes that are like off in the distance.
Yeah, I remember that.
dude.
Linda actually has some pictures she had of footprints in this book.
Those footprints are very different.
The footprints that were in Linda's book are the only footprints that I've seen that I deem as credible. Just throwing it out there. Because they were huge.
Yeah,
That's
they're
how they
5
were.
inches long.
That's how they
huge
were on
for a
there,
dog.
too.
I don't know if you can see it that well because it's black and white, but
Yeah, I can kind of see that. Yeah. So I think we're at one of these areas where, unfortunately, it's almost like Sasquatch to me, because there's something there, but I'm not willing to put my finger on it and write, this is Dogman, because I don't know that that's what this is.
Well, the one thing that I am 100% confident in saying is that this is not a flesh and blood creature. Like, I'm 100%.
This is rare for you. Yeah, this is very rare for you to say this.
Oh yeah, it really is. Because normally it is either like, yeah, it's hogwash, Jersey Devil. It's Ben Franklin's love child. But this, honest to God, is one of the few phenomena that, like, I find intimidating to tackle.
Right.
Because, and I say this in a not like hokey way, but I find it intimidating to tackle because this subject, and I've said this since, probably about 2 years ago, everything that I saw and everybody that I knew that had looked into this phenomena with Dogman, specifically Dogman, the Dogman seemed to look back.
Yeah, you tackle it, it tackles you back.
Right.
And people ask the question all the time. They think I'm joking when I don't say the word and I don't talk about it. I'm telling you, I'm not joking. This is real. I don't feel comfortable with that subject. And I told, you've heard my story. That was just weird. And when that happened, honestly, that's when I kind of was like, oh boy, there is something to this. And I don't want to know anymore.
Jessie Doyle, she used to be one of the hosts here on the show.
Yeah.
And she is the one of the co-founders over there with Joe of Hellbent Holler. And they go out and they do all this work out in the LBL and in other areas. They're kind of taking a break on the LBL for now, it looks like. But I remember on one of their first expeditions, they'd sent us some thermal to review.
Yeah.
And you can go back and watch this on their YouTube. It's on their first LBL trip. But they sent us some thermal to take a look at it and see what we thought. And the thermal was operating in a manner that the subject that shows up was extremely temperature deficient to the surrounding environment. So this thermal image that Jessie had sent us to review, the subject in the image was much, much colder than the surrounding environment. Now, that is not completely out of line if you're in an environment where you have exposed tree and exposed rock and snow on the ground. The snow would obviously show up as a much colder object than the trees and the stones that have been beat by the sun all day. However, they were in the forest. It was around 40 some degrees, if I remember correctly. There was no snow involved. And this subject looked kind of like a jackal head. You could see the pointed ears and the long snout, and it was black as coal. This image was running in a state where the subject was much colder than the surrounding environment, and it should not have been. Now, you look at this in a paranormal respect. There are people who say when they feel entities or spirits enter the room that the room's temperature drops. That's why a lot of these paranormal gear has thermal detectors.
We've seen it.
We have
it. We felt it.
Yeah, we felt it. We've had it happen. And so this, again, goes into this more of a really weird paranormal environment. And for me, that's what I think the Dogman is. I do not think that this is a flesh and blood entity. I think what we're dealing with is an honest to God monster.
I think that's the best word for it.
I think it's something, it's not demonic per se. I don't think it's in league with Satan or anything like that. This might be something, one of those separate entities that's mentioned briefly in the Bible and other religions. Because if you dig into it, there was always evil before Lucifer decided to try to overthrow God and whatnot in heaven. It could be one of those things, because it's mentioned in Greek mythology about the Titans and how they were thrown into the bottomless pit equivalent in Greek mythology for all the evil things that they did. And they also had all sorts of evil monsters and stuff that were thrown in there with them, if I remember correctly. It could be something like that. Because everybody who's ever looked into it, it's had some sort of malevolent effect on them. And it's even like the hitchhiker effect from Skinwalker Ranch. It'll follow them home, and they'll have all kinds of weird stuff happen to them for a while. I kind of wonder if that's ever happened to Jesse and Joe.
Well, of course it has. Yes.
Yeah.
There's no doubt in my mind. What I find amazing about it is that it follows almost follows the same pattern as some of these I won't call them alien, non-human intelligence contact scenarios, where it does seem to be precognitive. It does seem to know what you are thinking and where you are going, and it manifests itself for whatever reason. I don't even know why it manifests itself, to be honest with you. Like if it's a trigger. It's one of those things that, honestly, I think that if you talk about it, it can absolutely manifest. It's hard for me to say that because I know everyone thinks I'm like, oh, you're an experiencer, you've seen this and that. It doesn't matter. I'm the biggest skeptic you're ever going to meet. I can't tell you how many times a day someone sends me a picture of an orb, and I'm like, yep, that's just a light refraction off of a...
I want to explain that to people a little bit for those who don't believe in what you're talking about.
No,
so every religion and every spirituality that has ever existed on earth will tell you that words have power. And it doesn't matter what language you're speaking, it's your intent, it's what you mean it to represent. Because it can tell by your thoughts what you're trying to say and what you're trying to depict.
Yeah. I mean...
That's why words have power.
Possibly. I mean, I don't know. But all I can tell you is that this thing, whatever it is, it's like Santa Claus. It knows when you've been sleeping. It knows when you've been awake, et cetera, et cetera. Like this thing knows when you're talking about it. It knows. And, you've heard my story. We were out in the forest. I was just talking about Jesse and Joe. And this was, a few years ago about that footage that you were talking about too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And literally at that time, I turn around, there's no, Maria was behind me and her footsteps are quiet and she's looking off the bridge like, what are you looking at? I don't know. I saw something and it looked like it was, I don't know. Never mind. I'm like, no, we don't do that. What was it? And she's like, oh, it kind of looked like a wolf or a dog. And I'm like, we're gone. Let's go right now.
The reason why this thing is not physical is because there has not been a single picture that I can say without a doubt is real of one of these things out in the wild. I've seen fake ones.
There's
like
been a
ones
few
of,
pictures,
claws coming
but,
from behind a tree. Stuff
what
like
are
that.
they?
They're always fake.
I think some of the almost all of the good images that I can tell you with the model that it was used to make it. We have
Right,
it.
right.
Daz made that
The only
werewolf.
the only person I think that actually has a real honest to God possible
Jesse.
image is Jesse and Joe.
Jesse and
Yep.
Joe.
That's
Yep.
it.
Jesse and
And
Joe.
And that's if you're interested, again, that's Hellbent Holler. They've got the only image, in my opinion, that is
It's hard to
remotely
debunk.
valid.
Well, it's hard to debunk, and here's why I think it's real. Literally, after they got that, yes, they started having those weird experiences. They started seeing the orbs. They started seeing this progression.
Things, the uptick and escalation of events.
And that's how this works. For whatever reason, in all these phenomena, all across the board, it seems that there is an uptick in this. The only difference is with this one, instead of this peaceful contact event where you may learn the secrets of the universe, or you may become enlightened, or you may end up on a spaceship, being who knows, experimented on. But this one, you might end up ripped into pieces.
Yeah, ask Martin about that.
No, for real. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, dude, I'm telling you, this thing is not a cuddly little thing. It's not one of those, you hear that about Bigfoot too, but Bigfoot, from what I understand, you've got to really cross a Bigfoot to get it to take action against you. And I
If you
believe
guys
that.
want to read one of the best Dogman stories I've ever heard, check out Martin's book.
Best?
If you can see that.
More like the most terrifying.
Well, yeah, that too. I tell you, when I heard him talk about that at Wild and Weird Fest, I got chills.
Man, I'm telling you.
That was horrifying.
Yeah. It's a very real phenomenon, in my opinion.
Yes.
And I know there are people who are listening to it right now and they're like, those guys have lost their mind. I used to have respect for them, but now they're talking about mythological creatures and dogs. And look,
I'm telling you, it's the only one.
I didn't think it was real.
The only one for me that I'm sold on. I think
we thought that it was a misidentified Sasquatch in multiple occasions. This was the fence that we sat on.
Yeah.
The one who got us to really look into it deeply is no longer with us.
Yeah.
Wayne is the one who made us actually look at it closer, because it was an open shut case. I'm like, that's just a misidentified, Sasquatch. I can believe that before I believe this. No.
I think sometimes it might be.
Sometimes it could be, man. I mean, and sometimes Sasquatch is the misidentified bear. Let's be real. But, but in this case, this thing is very different.
Mm-hmm.
I know that there are people who listen to the show, and they're interested in the phenomena. They've read the books. They've seen the movies. I know Seth's made several now. And it seems to be more in pop culture than it's ever been before. I mean, I don't know that that's a good thing.
Right. I think it gives that psychical energy.
The psychical energy, the manifestation, right? And this thing is not to be played with. I mean, that's just my opinion on it. I remember I talked to Jesse. I talked to you about it. It was right after that event, and where I said there was something on her back deck. If you go back and listen to the shows, you'll get to hear a little bit about that. But I don't want anything to do with that in particular. So basically, I'll listen to all your accounts, guys, and I'll follow up with all your accounts. We will do that. We will do that. But if it's a Dogman account, we're probably not going to do that.
So you're saying
We'll
we're never
listen to
going to
it.
have a Dogman workshop?
We'll listen
Odds are we're not going to follow up with it.
We will never have a Dogman workshop as long as I'm alive. That's a fact. No. And if you want to go out and use what you learn at some of our workshops to do that, that's on you.
Yeah. You brought that upon yourself.
But I'm not kidding though. I mean, I know, like I said, there's people who think that we're just playing this up. We're not playing this up. This is a real, honest to God warning. If you go out there and mess with this thing, it will mess back. It is not. Yeah, it's not friendly. This is not friendly. This is not, in my opinion, I know you won't believe me saying this, I don't think that this is a screen image. I think it's real. Whatever it is, it's a very real entity, and it does not have our best interest.
Let me just
In a lot of cases, it seems that this non-physical entity can actually inflict physical harm.
Yes.
Let me just put it this way
And-
for the listeners. Why do you think Jesse and Joe are taking a break from LBL?
That could be.
I don't know.
I know they've been doing Bigfoot research, but that's
Yeah, they're
it.
doing Bigfoot research in North Carolina now.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, but I would progress at your own at your own level of prudence, I suppose, on this, because
Yeah.
yeah,
When honest to God, the Dogman topic is a much different topic than the Loop Guru, because that's a werewolf.
it's werewolf.
Even in the French, in the Cajun stories, it's a man who turns into a wolf,
Just a physical transformation.
and it takes a transformation. It's not a skinwalker.
Yeah, can you address that, please?
Yeah,
Because
so
there are people who do believe, for whatever reason, we're talking about a werewolf. That's the same thing.
I
as
blame
a skinwalker.
Facebook.
It's not the same thing.
I blame all these Facebook cryptid.
Well, Wendigo's the same way. They think a Wendigo is a skinwalker.
I know they do.
TikTok. I blame TikTok.
Well, you can.
Yeah,
yes.
TikTok's definitely not helping. None of the social media in general.
Yeah.
But so what you're dealing with the Navajo skinwalker, that is a bad medicine man.
Yes.
Real people, 100% real people. This is not a made up creature. They're depending on some of the lore. There is some shape shifting, but
The
bulk of
actual
it tends
terminology,
to be
Joe.
more that they take on the
Well,
abilities.
the actual terminology is not a medicine man. It's actually a witch.
It's a witch. Yeah, it's a witch.
Navajo witch. They make that very, very clear.
Yeah.
And their definition of witch is not our definition of witch.
Yeah, it's not bubble coil.
Yeah,
coil of
this
trouble.
is an evil, like you said, a shaman who has gone the dark way, has basically done the Vader thing, right? I mean, that's what
They've
we're
killed. To initiate, you have to kill someone that is in your family or that you love.
Yeah, Anakin Skywalker. They've gone
Yeah.
full Anakin.
Yep, they've Sith,
Yep, all the way.
and so it is. It's not a good thing. These people have done heinous acts to attain the abilities that they have.
Which
And-
allegedly involve.
Some of them allegedly involve full morphing or taking on at least the attributes of this creature, like some of the physical attributes, not
Right.
like 100% transformation into a coyote. Some stories do, but generally it's the person becomes just so full of animal rage.
Mhm.
They take on the attributes of this creature and the tenacity. And it's
Usually
again,
they're hired to come after you, right?
oh yeah, they can be like Hitman.
Mhm. That's
Absolutely.
That's the modern
The
take
modern-
on it, and you don't talk about that anymore. For real, that's yeah, that's the modern take on that.
That's some bad hoodoo, according to the natives. If you listen to the native stories of their encounters with those things, that is next level nightmare.
Yeah, the only way that you can stop one or break a curse is to know the person's original name before they became the Skinwalker.
That's one of the legends. Yep.
And so that's the only way you can break the curse or kill them. It's like their kryptonite is knowing their
Well, let's
original
speak
name.
about this. We know that there's a way to take down werewolves with silver bullets. Why is that, Joe? Where did that come from?
It came from France, and it was also attributed to vampirism.
Mm-hmm.
And
It was iron with vampires, right?
iron they couldn't get away from iron.
Binding. Okay.
You
Yeah.
could bind a vampire with iron.
Right.
Do you know the
Yes.
old stories that vampires actually turned into wolves and not bats?
I've heard stories of that.
Yeah, I've heard some of that with the original vampire stories. Now,
Like
when you
the
start getting into
Eastern
some of the
European
older, like
stuff.
Polish stories and
Oh,
German
yeah.
stories, they're like these bizarre monsters with more teeth than anything else should have.
It's very interesting to me that we have so much similarity in these monsters, true monsters, as we're talking about here, because our monsters, our pop culture monsters, before the cryptids, the actual monsters, the movie monsters, so to speak, there's such a werewolf and Dracula. Like, why these things are so similar? And in fact, in a lot of pop culture, we do see them together, like you just said. Like, they are written together.
Monster Squad. Wolfman's got nards, baby.
There you go. Same thing. So, what? I mean, where did that start? To me, there's always a origin to these things. You know that. We've talked about this multiple times. Someone didn't just dream this up. I don't believe that Steve Cook came up with that song and that created Dogman. I think that there was something here. Yeah, there was inspiration.
No, if you look into Eastern Europe before Christianity made their way over there, they had those stories long before that too.
Right.
Like, it goes back to prehistory. There's even supposedly a Dogman carving in Göbekli Tepe that people still argue about. They think
I've seen that. I don't think that's a Dogman.
Yeah, it doesn't look like a dog.
People say it has like human-like features, but I'm like, eh.
Yeah.
But they obviously held wolves in regard of some kind. So maybe they did worship wolves back then.
Wolves, jackals, yeah. You got to remember, I mean, we are talking about, what, 12,000?
Prehistoric man.
Yeah, I mean, 12,000 years. I mean,
yeah.
So, when was the canine actually domesticated?
In theory.
When was the
this
canine
is debated,
domesticated?
okay?
Because I know it's been debated. I've heard various numbers, but what is the most agreed upon time period that says that this cave guy says
that they recently found dog bones at a Neanderthal burial site?
Yes.
That sounds about right to me.
And so the reason this number, I'm getting ready to throw you a number
that
is so broad. It's about 10,000 years.
You're dropping again.
Testing.
Yep.
The number is about 10,000 years broad because nobody can agree. Archaeologists, anthropologists,
imagine
none
that.
can agree.
Yeah,
we've 14,000 to 29,000 years ago.
Okay, 14,000, 29,000 years. That sounds pretty good to me. So that would fall within the what I was trying to get at. Like, maybe they were still domesticating them at that point.
Yep.
They were probably guarding their temples, at that point. At least some of them were, right? Or what have you. So it's not beyond a reason to think that that carving could be, basically, it could be a dog. Like an actual, we're putting our guard dog.
The Sumerians held them in high regard.
Yeah.
Wolves and dogs and everything in between, and they held in high regard. One of the higher gods could turn into a wolf, if I remember correctly.
I mean, it makes
Anunnaki. I can't remember who.
Makes perfect sense to me. I mean, but I don't know, guys. Like I said, this is one that I don't think there's going to be any disagreement on at the end of it. That it's very real.
Mm-hmm.
It's not physical, though it can take on physical attributes, obviously.
Well, and this is Dogman.
Yes. Not werewolf, Dogman.
Right.
There are other paranormal phenomena associated with it.
Skinwalker Ranch, for example.
Yeah. Yeah, Skinwalker Ranch is a great example, like you had mentioned before. There was actually ground trace evidence supposedly taken at Skinwalker Ranch where the lady was looking out the window and saw the huge dog-like thing standing on its hind legs watching her across the across the street from where she was at. And they went over to the tree and they found giant dog-like footprints and cast those. There's been ground trace evidence of something physical, yet I don't think it's physical. And how do we get our minds around that?
It could be extra dimensional. That's the thing.
You're
dealing with possible quantum mechanics of something that is transitioning from one realm to the next. So when I say that I don't believe it's flesh and blood, I should probably change.
Yep.
Do not believe it's flesh and blood from this plane of existence.
Yeah, I think that's the best way to put that, because it obviously does adhere to some of our laws of physics, doesn't it?
But it can also teleport and do some other weird
But it can
crap.
also, yeah, it has its own ways of doing things, but it does seem subjective to some of our laws of physics, at least while it is in a physical form.
Yeah.
I.e., there has been cases of it being shot at. Skinwalker Ranch, for example.
Yep.
Where it just, it takes the
Multiple
fire,
rounds loaded into this thing to no effect.
gets up and walks away.
30-06.
Yeah.
Yes.
These were not little baby pew-pews. These
No.
were meat chunk throwers.
Gets up, turns around, looks at him, then walks away, or runs away, or whatever it was. But the point is, definite physical, but has these other attributes going on too.
Yeah.
We are dealing with something that is far more advanced than us physically. Maybe not mentally, but physically. I don't think that this one is one of those brilliant things. I just think it exists.
Yeah.
I think that its modus is that it just exists. How is it getting here? That's another question.
It is.
Are they like some kind of pawn of another intelligence? I don't know. I mean, are we being messed with on a cosmic level? Hey, I mean, everything's on the table at this point, right?
Mm-hmm.
Are these things some kind of advanced guard from an invading alien species even? It sounds crazy, but it's on the table because we don't know. And to sit out and say that
Either Goa'uld.
that's what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, it may be something like that. We don't know. I mean, we just assume that aliens are going to look like us because pretty much everything we've heard, read, seen, they do.
Yeah.
But what if they don't? And I don't mean all of them, by the way, because I am finally coming to that realization that we may be in some form of, like Friedman used to say, a galactic federation type deal where there's just a lot of different things there. Well, we know that there's these stories that even Ashid said that some of them don't like us, some of them don't even want us to exist.
Yeah.
Well, if I had to put my money on something that didn't like us and didn't want us to exist, that has visited us, I would put my money on what we're calling this phenomena, what we are calling Dogman.
Yeah. It's, this to me is one of these phenomena that it can fit in so many different boxes.
Yeah.
Except this plane of existence. It doesn't, from a morphological standpoint, like a physiological, morphological standpoint, there has never been any reason for a canine to stand up like a person, especially with the legs still being formed like canine legs and having that, digigrade shape.
Right.
And with that, there is no evolutional reason for it. So its morphology doesn't make sense on our understanding. It has abilities to do things, appear randomly, disappear, be physical, but not physical at the same time. It's such a strange phenomena that I'm not comfortable touching it. Like, I'm fine talking about it. I'll sit and talk to you about it all day long. Don't mind doing that. You will not catch me going out into the woods
even thinking about it.
Research on Dogman.
Even thinking about it while you're out there.
No.
It's not going to happen.
I purposefully put mental blocks to not think about it whenever I go out, because there have been so many people who have encountered these things because they've, and they knew what they knew what it was when they saw it. It wasn't like, oh man, I just saw this weird dog looking creature. No, they see it and they know it's Dogman because they've heard stories. They've listened to podcasts. They've listened and watched YouTubes. They've done all these things. So this is a thing that they already know. And all of a sudden, poof, there it is right in front of them. That's terrifying
Yeah.
on a few different levels. Now, the skeptic in me is like, these people are nuts. But I know some of these people, and I know they're not nuts, but I know that they have been scared out of their gourd
They saw it. It's all
by
something.
this thing that showed up.
If
Yep.
somebody tells me they've seen one and they don't act terrified, I'm going to assume they're just making it up. Because if
Oh,
you
yeah.
saw something like that, you would be wetting your pants. You'd be
There's
having
no
brown
question.
trousers.
This is a predator
No
on
question.
a
Yes.
whole different level.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
This
What
is
you would be seeing.
this is beyond anything. I mean, we've seen weird stuff, but nothing like this. And
Right.
that's no. I don't want to. That's just a fact.
Mm-mm.
I don't want to.
It's just, it's so, it gets real muddy when you really start digging into it, because there's a lot of different voices in this field, and there's not a whole lot of objectivity.
Mm-mm.
And I think that this has been a very honest look. What do you guys think?
I think a lot of people are going to be asking us why we didn't touch the LBL thing, and I'm going to answer that.
It's
I
not
think
our story to tell.
It's not our story to tell. Yeah, you want to do that? Go over and listen to Jess. Listen to Joe. Go to
Yeah.
Hellbent Holler. They've done some of the best you're going to find on that.
Oh
So-
yeah, they've actually been there.
Yep, exactly. So for you who are wondering why, hey, you guys touched on everything but that, that's why. It's been covered, so there's no need for us
Yep.
to do that. And I think that, like I said, it's a real phenomenon. I don't advise you to go out there and mess with this. It's something you really need to take precautions with.
It
This
dips
is
into the paranormal far too deep.
too deep, and you don't want. This is not one of those CE5 kind of things.
Yeah.
You ain't gonna make contact. If you do, it might be the last contact you make. That's a fact. I don't say that lightly. I mean, I really do believe
Mhm.
that. I mean, that's a fact. And there's nothing more terrifying than you going out in the woods and you thinking about this thing, and then you see something like that, or you hear something like that behind you. You know immediately what just happened. You know that something just figured out somehow that you were thinking about it. It manifested itself. Why did it do that? And the fact that it can is enough for me to say, nope, don't want to be any part of that. And that's out. Because, the fact is, C5s with extraterrestrials or extra dimensionals or whatever these other things are that Greer and everybody else has done. I use Greer lightly, but you know what I mean. I think he actually has managed to do some in the past, but I digress. He went a little overboard. But I do believe that you can do things like that, and I do believe that you will eventually get an answer. Eventually. And it won't be something that rips your arm off. I can't
Might
say
be
that.
rips your soul out.
Maybe, but I can't say anything about that for Dogman.
Yeah, it's it's again. Brandon, any final thoughts?
Well, I really don't know what to make with Dogman. I mean, it doesn't act animalistic at all. It doesn't have the typical tendencies like Bigfoot does. It doesn't act like an animal out in the woods. It doesn't. No one's ever seen it going around and sniffing, peeing on trees, looking for deer to kill. Nothing like that. It's always, I see a Dogman and he's coming after me. Almost every single encounter. So this thing is malevolent,
It's like
and
the
it's
boogeyman.
wanting you for some reason.
It's aggressive, man. It's completely aggressive. It wants you or some part of you. Yes, absolutely agreed. And, you had brought up earlier, way back there, something about demonic or whatnot. I don't use that term. I hardly ever use that term. But I will say this, that whatever that thing is, it's ancient. And I think that it is probably one of the purest forms of what we would call evil, because I don't think there's anything good about it. Just don't think there's
I think
anything
that
good
they're-
about it at all.
I think that they're so old, they're before the fall. I think they're older than that. I think they're one of the ancient evils that's always been around.
Who
Yeah.
knows, man? I mean, I ain't gonna disagree with you. That's for sure.
We'll do an episode on that later.
Oh yeah, well, it's part of the Nephilim story.
hmm
So we're going to be covering a whole lot with that Nephilim topic when we finally run that episode. We're still putting together everything for it. But when it comes out, guys, you are going to love it. So I think that we've covered as much as we can without really dipping our toes into the LBL. And I would like to have Martin Groves come on and tell his story to you guys to do the LBL justice. And that will be a future show. We've talked to Martin. He's agreed to come on the show. We just have to set a date. So then, if you guys would like to support Wild and Weird Radio and keep it free for eons and eons to come, you can actually, over on YouTube, just drop us a sticker in the super chat. You can donate directly through YouTube. You can also go to wildandweirdwv.com and go to our shops tab, and you can peruse all the wares we have, like this shirt, and have it sent straight to your door because Wild and Weird wants you, baby. And now, if you would like to send in your sighting, if you've had a Dogman report, please send it to someone else. No, I'm kidding. You can actually send it to us. We will review
And we'll send it to someone else.
and then we will send it to someone else, so that way they can go out and get their head ripped off by a Dogman.
Like Jesse
Then-
Joe.
Hopefully not Jesse and Joe. We like
No.
No, I mean like sending it to them, not get their head ripped off.
So then, if you've also had anything that you would like to share on the show, you can send it over to wildandweirdwv@gmail.com or just reach out to us at Wild and Weird Radio on the Facebook page. And remember, thank you, super huge thank you to all of our supporters, all of the executive producers of this show that are keeping it free for eternity.
So
Every one of you
what's,
guys.
Where are we at next?
Oh yeah, our next stop is going to be at the Flatwoods Monster Convention.
Oh, yeah.
September the 9th. That'll be the next place you can catch us. That's actually, if you're listening to this show the day it drops, it's next week. You want to come out and be a part of that? It would be great to meet all of you guys in person and get to spend some time with you all and enjoy the show. Remember, the Flatwoods Monster Convention is brought to you by Small Town Monsters, Wild and Weird West Virginia, Dave Spink's World of Weird Creature Replica, and the Flatwood Monster Museum, along with other sponsors like Adulting Axolotl, Erie, Florida, or Erie Travels.
Erie Travels.
Erie Travels. I got it wrong. He's moving from Florida. He's Erie Travels now.
Erie Travels.
Oh.
And guys,
Crowtown. Don't forget Crowtown.
Oh yeah, Crowtown Squatchers. We've got John and his wife over at Crowtown Squatchers. That show is going to be phenomenal. We can't thank all the sponsors enough. We appreciate you all and everybody who shows up. It's going to be an absolute blast. Then the very following week is the
Big one.
mecca of wild and weird events. Not our event, but this is a wild and weird as it gets.
Yeah, it really is.
Mothman Festival.
Yep.
It is where everybody who's anybody is going to be the weekend of September 15th and 16th. You want to be there. It's going to be nuts. Following that, you can catch us at Thunder in the Mountains, followed up about a month later at CryptidCon, which we will be speaking at
when are we doing
CryptidCon and Thunder in the Mountains.
Wait, we're at the library too.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about the library. Ravenswood
Library.
Library. That's
That's before
October
Mothman.
the 7th, I believe, right?
No, that's before Mothman, actually.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, I think so. It's across Lane's library, actually.
Oh, I forgot about that. We're actually going to be speaking at the Cross
Yeah,
Lanes.
Cross
It's
Lanes.
the South Charleston Public Library or Charleston Public Libraries. It's some public library,
Well, the public
but it's in
library.
Cross Lanes, West Virginia. If you guys are listening and in our immediate area and you want to see us come together and talk, come over to Cross Lanes. It's going to be a good time. It's at the public library there. Going to be great. We're going to be talking about
That's
some
awesome.
Bigfoot stuff.
Bring some
Mothman
good stuff out.
Flatwoods monster stuff.
Let you see some equipment and so forth. It'll be fun.
It's going to
Good.
be a good time.
Good times.
And remember, if somebody brings you a Dogman report, nope. Stay wild and weird, everybody.